This is going to be your guide to using Glimmora in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So this Pokemon has captivated a lot of people because of how crazy the concept is. This thing's pronouns are entry hazard. Game Freak just decided to make that the entire identity of a Pokemon, so people are like, well, I want to use it, it's got a lot of weird and cool stuff, but does it end up viable at the end of the day? And that's what this video is going to be about, so if you end up enjoying it or if it helps out in any way, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment your thoughts down below. So the funny thing is, we have Toxic Debris as a new ability on this Pokemon. When it's hit by a physical attack, toxic spikes are set around the attacker. That's kind of the solution to making toxic spikes viable, because it's effectively a waste of a turn, especially with like Toxapex, Amoonguss, a lot of bulky poison Pokemon just existing. You throw out toxic spikes, well then the next switch is going to be into a regenerator poison Pokemon, the spikes get absorbed, and you lost a turn. So Toxic Spikes hasn't been used in a long time, and I'd also argue that Stealth Rocks has never really been viable. Me ignoring Stealth Rocks and then using that turn to just set up and win the game on the spot is what's made me one of the best Pokemon battlers. And a lot of people have caught on to that over the last couple of years and generations, so as Stealth Rock has fallen out of favor, that means like this Pokemon's concept is too little too late and might not work, but maybe there's ways of kind of getting this thing to succeed, and that's why the first thing I wanted to look at is, again, subversion. The entire design of this generation is subversion, so if you subvert the subversion, you actually find weird success with the Pokemon, because everything is just so broken because of what James Turner did for the design of recent Pokemon. So let's take a look at the stats to see what we have to work with, and defensively, you're above average on innate tankiness, but you aren't immediately like, whoa, this is the tankiest Pokemon ever, which kind of hurts the theme of needing to take a hit to set up, and then wanting to further set up on like Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and then getting the trifecta going, so you need to go like full tanky investment into it, or at least like max out the hit points in some way, and then you have good durability, but you're not, you know, outrageously durable like a lot of the Pokemon introduced. Garganasalt, Dondozo, few others as well. Like, even Orthworm is wild as a pure defensive tank. So, comparatively, you look at this, and once again, they overloaded the kit, but then they have to nerf the Pokemon in some kind of way, and the result ends up being not that viable. It's Generation 7 all over again. But then we have some interesting stats. 86 speed on a tanky setup Pokemon. That means you're just going to outspeed all the other tanks, and it means the Golden Go matchup just gets ugly, like everything in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet right now, because of the ugly Pokemon introduced like Golden Go and Garganasalt. So Golden Go can do some speed creepy things, mostly to speed creep Golden Go and the 85 tier, and then that gets kind of weird, but it can afford it because it hits like a truck and then buys into tankiness on its hit point EVs. So now Glimmora kind of has to be aware of that. I think 20 speed EVs going to be pretty good, because then that's 109 at level 50. That's going to take out Creeping Creep, Speed Creep, Golden Go. So that's good to have. And then, okay, wait, 130 special attack. This thing trucks. Why are we trying to set up Stealth Rocks and do weird stuff like that and get the spikes and toxic debris when we can just mow down Pokemon and get free toxic spikes? One of these things beat me up on the battle spot because we traded setup, and then it hurt me. That's not supposed to happen. So this Pokemon has a really weird design in that sweeping Pokemon just going to run it over. Glimmora can trade a little bit into that. So you can just be an int Stealth Rock Pokemon. But against setup, it actually has a way out with that 130 special attack and insane coverage. So that's what brings us to the type coverage checker on Pokemon DB. Find it in the description down below if you get lost. Poison Ground Rock. You just get it. You just hit every Pokemon. Now, unfortunately, and I really want to see the updates where this just has the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet dex, because if we splash in another move into that, that's an incredible amount of super effectives. It's coverage that you really wouldn't expect. Rock, Poison, Ground, those are, like, Ground, yeah, but Rock, Poison doesn't hit a lot of stuff, and then you just kind of find the magic sauce, and we have one of the best super effective coverages in the entire game out of nowhere. Now, a lot of Pokemon aren't in this game, it also becomes meta-dependent, so maybe this is just optimal against everything in a National Dex format, but what's actually more optimal for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as well as future DLC? Unfortunately, the tools are just slightly behind on that, but something to take into consideration. So that's why the moveset looks like this. You truck a Steel-type Pokemon with the Earth power, it's not going to like that because of 130 special attack and you're bulk invested, so you're just doing more damage to it. And if it's slower because we're in a slower paced kind of meta, Glimora's just winning. It's two-shotting things. It's one-shotting super effectives on stab. It also just has the coverage to out into anything, which is why I think Assault Vest is the play. Now, physical is what procs toxic debris, but then things kind of get ugly when we look at our weaknesses. 4x to ground. Okay, just avoid Earthquake. And that's kind of easy to do because you got Garganasalt, and now the meta is going Flying Garganasalt, so you don't get fissured by other Garganasalt and Dondozo. Welcome to Generation 9 meta. But I think that's another problem with Glimmora, is that if you use it wrong, you lead Glimmora, and then you just throw the game away, because that's one of the most obvious things. You see a Glimmora on the opposing team, or in the team select, and the immediate reaction is, well, they're going to lead that, they're going to go for their rocks, and try to pick up a bit more setup. But if you lead Garganasalt, immediately get it Tera Flying, well, now you actually have a free switch for your Glimmora into a tanky Pokemon that can then resist and heal up. It also means, like, with the resistances of Glimmora, decent amount, you can actually find one of these, get Glimmora in, get it set up. It's even better if you, like, switch it into a physical move that's getting resisted, like a Fire-type hit or something. And then you just kind of play musical chairs with your Pokemon until Glimmora gets in relatively for free. I think that's a big problem about people that once play Stealth Rock or Sacrifice leads, is that they make it way too predictable, get set up on, and then lose the game on the spot. But with Glimmora, it kind of has the kit to not have to do that. You don't have to just lead Glimmora and run it down the entire time. You can wait around, especially with a lot of the other broken Pokemon in the game, and now this is where your value comes in. Switching between Glimmora, Garganasalt, and another one of your Pokemon even halfway through the game, don't worry, the Stealth Rocks and the Toxic Debris will stack up. Or you can also just go for raw damage, where now, like, you can bring in Glimmora, you can make sure it doesn't have too many threats. If they're trying to switch in a Ground-type Pokemon, they're still going to get hurt by this, and you have the out into Garganasalt because you set that up. So it's really about setting up the Glimmora before it sets up, and then you find weird kind of success. I just like the Assault Vest for the bulk. That, again, this also lets you switch into special attackers, kind of get a little bit extra out of that, and just hurt them more, and mow them down with a 130 crazy coverage Pokemon. As for the Tera type, this is where it's going to take, like, a lot of fishing around. You know, you think Ice, that always adds crazy stuff into coverage. Nah, Grass just gives you more super effective hits. What about Electric? Grass gives you more super effective hits? Okay, Steel. Steel gives us nothing. So you look at some of the other things this Pokemon gets. You want the Flash Cannon. You want that Fairy-type Pokemon to hurt. You want it to get burned by the cold steel. But wait, you got Sludge Bomb anyways. So, Stab Sludge Bomb, which means Flash Cannon doesn't do anything for you. It might just feel fun to throw a rainbow at this Pokemon or throw a rainbow coverage at the enemy team. You still need to think critically, but the Pokemon community is really bad at that. So, yeah. Do we find any other kind of weird things? Give me a second so I can actually click through all the moves and find out the best one. It's Grass. Fairy kind of comes close, and Fighting is pretty good. So, I mean, yeah, like Dragon-type Pokemon, you just want to crush them on that. So, maybe you go, like, Tera Fairy into some kind of Tera Blast, and then that rounds out your coverage, but it doesn't really give you too much extra. Also, you have the Dazzling Gleam, so you don't even need to Tera Fairy or find some kind of weird Tera Blast type. I think you just go Tera Ground. Now, I did a video talking about the best Tera type. Ground seems like it's on the bottom end, unless you're doing it explicitly for coverage, because now you're just picking up weaknesses, but anything's better than having a 4x, I guess. And then, what wants to eat a Stab, Sludge Bomb, Power Gem, or Earth Power from a 130 Pokemon? Nothing. This triple coverage is nasty, and that's kind of like the one stipulation I gave. There's like, maybe a half dozen Pokemon that want to go Tera Ground just to get the nastiest triple stab out there. Apparently it's Glimmora. Bet you didn't think that. So yeah, you just bulk wall break. And when you think about a wall breaking Pokemon, it's like Life Orb or a Choice Band or just a Pokemon that looks beefy, looks muscly. But no, it's got a 130 special attack. It just crushes things. Wow, that's kind of nuts. What about some other things for the Glimmora? Corrosion. So a rare ability we haven't seen that could get more usage, because the ability to poison steel and poison type Pokemon is really good. But it didn't really work out for the Salazzle, and Salazzle had an interesting idea behind it, that it can just kind of come in, break down the toxic stalling poison or steel type Pokemon, and then have sweeping potential after that. So it should, in theory, cover against everything on the opponent's team, but then it didn't. So that's kind of weird. However, the removal of Toxic from Pokemon's kits has actually made Corrosion less viable. Like, you'd think, oh, that means Poison-type Pokemon, they're better. The Pokemon that naturally get Toxic are actually more relevant for the Toxic stalling, but it doesn't really work out that way. Corrosion was actually better when any Pokemon could just randomly throw out the Toxic and start stalling you with, like, weird typings and stuff, and then you actually needed Poison and Steel-type Pokemon to resist and absorb that pressure, and then you could come in with the Corrosion and then break that down. Since Toxic isn't common, the need to typing immune it isn't that common, and now everything's kind of weird. So you got Toxic Corrosion, naturally sets up, and because of that, you're not really doing crazy amounts of damage, so you want to get as tanky as possible. Bold Nature, that's going to give you the stats. I want to put a lot into defense, but a little bit into special defense. You know, you gotta get a little extra tankiness out of that. Look at that, we just get 7% durability just by teching a couple extra points. So play around with this, depends on what's in the meta. Mostly physical seeming right now, like I just don't find opportunities to bring in Blissey. And then whatever the Glimmora is kind of weak to, then you can play around that. Tera Flying, that way you just flying into the Earthquake. Free Toxic turn. Free anything turn. That could be huge to Toxic and opponent's ace Pokemon, and then you tag them with an Acid Spray. Acid Spray Power Gem follow-up. That's a lot of damage. They don't want to lose half their special defense and then even a 130 uninvested Stab Rock type move. If they try to swing on you with a move that makes contact, they just lose 1/8 of their hit points and they're KO'd. Which is also why the Leftovers is pretty good, because you got that bulkiness, you can just spiky shield whenever, even if they're just using special attacks or any kind of attack, you get the hit points, they can't do anything about it, you get, they get Toxic stalled, that's kind of it. Maybe there's a rest option in here, like rest, Chesto Berry, but you don't have, like, too much set up, and then the Pokemon starts to lose identity because we have Iron Defense, so maybe go dedicated full defense Pokemon, like, no one's gonna expect that. You just absorb physical hits pretty alright, and then you set up the Iron Defense, rest it out, and now you're just unkillable against physical Pokemon, especially with the flying kind of changing your weaknesses around. But then you don't need the Acid Spray, but then Corrosion Toxic just means you hit everything except for the Golden Go and Garganasalt. So, like, maybe that's what also need to happen, that Corrosion just needs to affect everything, regardless of typing or ability. If that got the rework, then Glimmora would be busted, but it would also actually make it to where these busted Pokemon would have checks, and then there's actually balance from, like, this crazy kind of overtuning. So, I don't know. We don't get the body press, so the Iron Defense is kind of weird. That's what I mean, like, the Pokemon's identity starts to fall apart. And then any Pokemon could technically rest, sleep, talk. Well, not any Pokemon with Acid Spray could do that, and then go into some kind of move. Like, this is still nasty, but then you don't need Corrosion. Then Toxic Debris actually gets them all poisoned anyways. And then now we just completely changed this Pokemon's identity. Maybe a Citrus Berry here, maybe a Leftovers, I don't know. This is where it's like the Pokemon has a lot of potential, but also could just get completely bodied out by like a sweeping Pokemon or setup, or just a better tank matchup. So it could find an angle, it can do some weird stuff. I just think this is like reliable. If you one-shot a Pokemon then do damage, Glimmora just +1'd you, or 1+'d you. So that's big advantage that you're fishing for in Pokemon. That could be what wins the game just off of an offensive Glimmora. Now what about Stealth Rocks? Like, this is what we're here for. This is what the Pokemon is designed for. Again, the trifecta. Stealth Rocks, Toxic Debris, maybe even find the Spikes. I think Spikes starts getting overrated, especially because a lot of flying and Flying Tera and Levitate and all that extra fun stuff going in. Also, you aren't bulky enough to set up forever. This isn't like a Skarmory that can tank a physical hit, do something roost, tank a physical hit, do something roost, and then eventually it just gets Stealth Rock Spikes and everything that it ever wants. They give Garganasalt Recover, but they don't give it to Glimmora. Also, that means maybe we could just do something really inty and stupid, but like, what if this actually like works? What if you just rest, sleep, talk your way to full Stealth Rock, Spikes, and Toxic Debris? It's super int. It seems mega terrible. But if you beat someone with this, that's kind of the greatest feeling ever. And it also works really well because of all the tanky Pokemon. Going back to even this setup on the Garganacl, where it's like Salt Cure, Recover, whatever, tank Garganacl, it doesn't matter at that point. Like, if you Salt Cure something with the Garganacl, eventually they have to switch out. They don't want this. So if you can predict a switch from your opponent because your Garganacl's too oppressive, and then you switch at the same time, Glimmora is just in for free. And also, in a weird way, entry hazards are kind of coming back, even though there's like a lot of setup tanking and whatever. But like if you can get the entry hazard, at least it's going to stay. There's not a lot of rapid spin Pokemon out there. We lost some other like common rapid spinners like Excadrill. So it's one of those things where like this is so niche that no one's prepared for it. And sure, you might lose the Toxic Debris, but it cost you nothing because it was free on the ability. And then now they just gotta deal with this. And if they go into a flying Garganacl, the Stealth Rocks, they don't want that either. So Stealth Rock Spikes kind of covers everything. I still think this is very risky to like just get you bodied, but if you're running broken Pokemon around it, that to where like you just win with Garganacl plus Toxpex plus Amoonguss plus whatever Pokemon you're running, and the third slot is effectively free, just make their life more difficult. The major risk here is that like a Gothitelle comes in, gets 6 Cosmic Powers, a Clodsire comes in, and then it also gets set up stockpiles and like body presses, or can Curse Amnesia on you. Curse Amnesia Pokemon, Iron Defense is strong, so like that's also where Corrosion kind of gets weird, and then you wish you had that. So I think Corrosion could just be better with Toxic in some situations, but then you're 5 moves slotted. So yeah, again, the identity of this Pokemon gets kind of sloppy. Let's go back to this thing that I've kind of been showing and teasing. You've got screens. So I mean, like, you take a hit, you light screen on full durability, you also reflect or whatever, and then you just take less damage, so you get your Stealth Rocks off. Maybe you get a Sacrifice Reflect, maybe you can Sludge Bomb something for a lot of damage. They hit you physical, and now it's like Stealth Rocks, Toxic Debris, and a couple turns of screens for your big Pokemon. There you go. Now this also can like win you those little matchups where you bring this into a Fluttermane. Fluttermane gets 1 Calm Mind, but slight amount of Poison Chip at the end of the turn, Stealth Rocks breaking sashes, or doing, you know, just that extra % your Pokemon is missing. There we go. Now all of your damage calculations make sense, and then this just kind of lets you win and set up. But again, like, you're losing 1/3 of your team in Battle Stadium, and in 6v6 singles, there's a lot of other Pokemon that can just set up against you, easily read this play, and just get stronger while you're kind of wasting turns here. You kind of got to take that gamble if you're running the Glimmora, that much like everything in Generation 9, a lot of Generation 8, Generation 7, you are one-dimensional. All of your power is put into being one-dimensional, and then some power was stripped away elsewhere, so you're not just like the most broken S-tier Pokemon to ever exist. So you have very narrow scope, and if you find that win condition, you find the angle, you trip up your opponent just a little bit, it actually gets pretty bad for them. And then last thing to talk about on the Glimmora, we just have other stuff. Citrus Berry is splashable on any of these movesets. Leftovers you can also run on pretty much anything. It's got substitutes. You outspeed Garganacl. They don't get to get the bonus effect of the Salt Cure on you, which feels really good. You have Confuse Ray, which just kind of adds into being a cheeky little setup Pokemon that does some nasty things. Memento, I've never liked the idea of this, but if you've already got like your Stealth Rocks and your screens and stuff, what else you gonna do? Might as well make it to where now the opponent is either forced to switch or forced to give you setup. But tank Pokemon aren't really bothered by this too much, so it's just one of those things, like, it doesn't help you win harder, and it doesn't help you not lose. I don't think it's that great. Just kind of mentioning, like, there's a lot of weird stuff in this kit you can just kind of throw out. Do you have a Rock Tomb? Just because, like, as you're going down, the opponent having less speed, just a little better. Maybe you broke a sash on something as well. Who knows? I think the big play here could be the Rock Polish. Like, you get Rock Polish on 86 speed. Let's look at those speed tiers. So, Timid, Rock Polish on your base defenses, like, you can reliably set that up. And now you're just outspeeding everything on 130 wild coverage Glimmora. Maybe you got Tera Blast. Maybe that's also where it's effectively this moveset, but instead of Energy Ball, which does give up a good amount of coverage, you have Rock Polish, and then boom. Also, that kind of changes these things around, and then like the timid nature, or maybe modest because you're outspeeding a lot. I don't know what item you run here. The Tera, you just want to use that so you don't get one shot by an earthquake. Citrus Berry is good for the setup, but I don't know what else you can run. Red card is like something I've been kind of playing around with where like, yeah, they hit you, they can't KO you, and then they get forced into an unfavorable matchup into just overwhelming power. Seems pretty nice. I really hate it as a noob trap item, but like maybe Wise Glasses actually turns some of these because you're just going for coverage. Maybe you get away with the Life Orb in Battle Stadium as well because like you have that innate bulk. Let's say you take a 70% hit, you Rock Polish, you get 3 hits, but if those are 3 KOs or even 2 KOs, you just went 1 for 2. You're winning. I don't like the idea of Life Orb burning you down or slowing down your sweeping power, or if a Pokemon is a 2-hit KO, now you're also losing a lot of that power, but I mean like, Glimmora coming in as a sweeper just gets scary. Back to the speed shenanigans though. So even with the timid nature +2 on the 86, you are not outspeeding the Flutter Mane. That actually makes me think like, could Game Freak have just gone for an 88 speed? I think they just completely forgot about this kind of interaction potentially. They threw the Rock Polish on it and then didn't think what that means for the speed tiers. So, okay, now Glimmora is kind of interesting. Also, we can look at like the damages we do here. Offensively, the matchup starts to show some nuance because Flutter Mane doesn't have the one-hit KO into the Glimmora. Uninvested 83-81, good, but has some vulnerabilities, so it is a 2-hit KO. But let's say, you know, Flutter Mane wants to go for that Calm Mind. Not a one-hit KO, and as it's setting up the Calm Mind, like, that Sludge Bomb damage is still hurting, and it's still going to stick to some kind of degree. Without the Calm Mind, we got these damage numbers over here, so like Scarf Flutter Mane, which is terrible, but for some reason that's kind of a thing, however not really. Anyone that's using it is bad. But like Flash Cannon, so low base power or like lower average base power, non-90, whatever. Non-stab super effective hit. It's kind of a thing. Stab Sludge Bomb though, feeling pretty strong as well. Also just kind of like shows the item shenanigans, like you throw on the Wise Glasses, doesn't really do much for you. Maybe you just want that Citrus Berry so like the rolls against uninvested, unstatted Pokemon like this don't look as bad. But at the end of the day, you're not going to catch the Flutter Mane, so do you even need the Timid Nature? Do you need all of these EVs here? Let's go and look at the Dragapult, which also has an interesting setup. So you need the 4 in speed at level 50 to Rock Polish into outspeeding Dragapult on Timid specs. Okay, and we're giving Dragapult the choice specs to kind of give it the best chance. What happens if you go all in onto the hit points? Draco Meteor, small chance to KO, but then I think you can also use this to scout the Dragapult. That you look at, like you go Rock Polish, so you take the hit from the Draco Meteor, you barely survive, and then you can kind of go, that did a suspicious amount of damage. We now have a -2 Dragapult that's locked into a Dragon move, so that's a free switch into a resisted hit. Also kind of shows the power of Assault Vest, being able to bulk that out and then throw some damage back at the opponent. Modest, just kind of giving you stats. Same thing on the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball does damage. However, it also gets kind of interesting if you eat the Shadow Ball, Citrus Berry, and now Specs Shadow Ball from a 100 special attack Pokemon is a 3-hit KO. And you're just faster than everything. So with Citrus Berry, Glimmora turns this matchup. That Stealth Rocks, Shadow Ball, Citrus Berry procs, Power Gem, Shadow Ball, you survive, Power Gem, Dragapult's KO'd, you're at like 3 health. But now you just get to outspeed and coverage out into the next Pokemon. Maybe that Sludge Bomb does half the opponent's health and poisons them. Glimmora just went +1 against a Specs Dragapult. Life Orb Dragapult does even less damage, but also is very telling when it starts to burn itself on the Life Orb. So again, you can kind of scout out the Dragapult's item and then use that to your advantage. If it doesn't show any kind of boosted damage, maybe it's got a Lumberry, maybe the world has gone upside down with Scarf Dragapult and stuff. So now you can like get a complete read on your opponent while turning into a sweeping threat on the Glimmora, but we can see that there are vulnerabilities to the 83-81 if you're not investing it. And also, maybe there's like some other speed tiers that start to catch on. Anything trying to speed creep the Dragapult from like 90 base speed +1, that starts getting problematic and you might have to consider that. Here's the Scale Shot or Scarf Chomp, so 253. Yeah, we're gonna have to work to get that, huh? So there's some kind of sweet spot where if that's actually what you want to break. So 168 EVs, and then that means you have to cut off your health, but that seems kind of fine into the Garchomp matchup. If you go Tera flying into the Garchomp Earthquake, and now it's like Scarf locked into that Earthquake, you're just kind of winning. You get your free +2 on the speed. You're 3-shotting on an Earth Power, which doesn't feel great, but again, this is going to be like very specific matchup-y kind of stuff. And then you're just kind of coveraging out into anything. So not getting the +1 on your special attack hurts a bit, but we're just trying to slam down that coverage, and we can still wall break, we can still make Pokemon feel it while transitioning into some kind of weird sweeping Pokemon. Also kind of shows some other weirdness, that Life Orb turns it into a 2-hit KO. So the Life Orb burn offsetting the damage you would otherwise take from it being a 3-hit KO. I'd rather eat 20% from the Life Orb than whatever damage an extra turn is worth for the opposing Pokemon. The game is weird. But yeah, there we go, guys. Those are some thoughts about Glimmora. It's got a lot. It can do some weird stuff. It can catch an opponent and ruin their day in multiple ways. So that could be used to your advantage. Like, you can just go for the Salt Vest set, you can go for this kind of setup set, where if they're predicting a Stealth Rocks, they think you're going to waste several turns on spikes and trying to get your toxic debris and stuff, and then you just start 2-shotting them, while either being fast or a wall breaker. That's just free. That's giving Glimmora advantage for you in the battle. Like I said, you just need to go 1+ at somewhere in the game and then hold on to it, and technically that's all you need to win. But you can also be devastating if you set up way too much stuff for your opponent to deal with and then hide behind fatter, overpowered tank Pokemon. So there might be some angle here. There actually might be something interesting to the Glimmora, which is weird because, yeah, like I said, one of the big reasons why I'm one of the best Pokemon battlers is because I see through noob traps and terrible strategy that has somehow gotten popular inside of Pokemon, and then I exploit it. So this is like the Pokemon that was built to be set up, but also built for me to exploit. However, I see like other angles with this Pokemon that make it a lot better than people think. So that's something that you really want to consider when using this Pokemon. I think it actually gets a bit more interesting. So, not a complete throwaway. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.